Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Charm City Sideline Podcast. I'm Zach on your left. On your right is Bradley, my co-host. And in the middle, we have a special guest, reoccurring guest, and one of our favorites. It's Sutton of the Purple Rain Podcast. Sutton, we are joined by you in a time where I think the fan base is a little divided, where we're thinking about if the Ravens kind of held their cards right or if they made the right deals as in yesterday. But the trade deadline is over. We're here to break it down a little bit and even talk a little bit about the Vikings here at the very end. But still, for now, Sutton, how are you feeling given the Ravens' moves? We can count Gilman into it as well, but getting Jones, we'll talk about him a little more in depth. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. First of all, thanks to you guys for having me on yet again on another episode of Charm City Sideline Podcast. I love being here, as we talked about before we went on air. But I'm feeling optimistic. Like you said, it's been a while since we talked, and the Ravens obviously started off the season 1-5, was all doom and gloom after that, but kind of looks like they're turning the tide. I still need to see a little bit more. Of course, I'm sure we'll get into the whole trade deadline situation and things like that. But as I'm sitting here kind of thinking it through and how I'm actually feeling about this Ravens team, I noticed that it's a very, very different feeling than what I'm used to, right, under this Lamar Jackson-led Ravens team. It feels like the story for this season is just totally different and just completely blindsided all Ravens fans, myself included. And like, if there's like a narrative or like a Cinderella story or anything like that comes out of this season, it would just feel all the more like, I don't know, I guess you could say, what's the word, like accomplishing. I don't know what the word is for that, but like, I don't know. I'm feeling hopeful. I guess I'll say that in one word. I'm feeling hopeful. But yeah, I'm ready to get into it though.
Yeah, of course. First, before we get into it and we get Brad's thoughts here on a couple of the moves, we're almost at 900 subscribers. We appreciate you all for joining in. Woo! Every Q&A, every preview, every post game. And we're going to be live throughout the year, all year round, as we're covering the Ravens. So we appreciate you guys subscribing and liking the video if you would. Brad, there's a couple big moves today. We don't have to talk about the Ravens just yet. It was a pretty star-studded trade deadline. Sauce Gardner to the Colts, Logan Wilson to the Cowboys, and also to the Cowboys, the name that I think a lot of Ravens fans were chirping to get here, Quinnen Williams of the Jets. What are you thinking about, I guess, the league-wide picture of the trade deadline this time?
Was not expecting at all Sauce Gardner to be traded. On top of that, 2 firsts and Adonai Mitchell is crazy. Mm-hmm. I do not think that's a good trade for the Colts. I think that is an awesome trade for the Jets to get 2 firsts for Sauce. I mean, he's a good corner. I don't think he's a top 3 corner. Logan Wilson is whatever, going from Cincinnati to Dallas. And then also the Cowboys trading for Quinnen Williams. What was it? A first and a second and Mozzie Smith, I believe. Mm-hmm. That is a trade that I would have been the Ravens fine. I would have been fine with the Ravens making that exact trade. I'm not mad that they didn't do it, but obviously 2 crazy blockbusters, both players leaving New York, and the Ravens do play the Jets in a few weeks. So that one's going to be interesting. Sutton, what are your thoughts on the, I guess any of your trades, but the Quinnen Williams trade, would you have liked the Ravens to go for that?
I would have, and I was one of the main ones campaigning all over social media, much like a lot of us, to go ahead and get him, pursue him relentlessly, whatever it takes, But once I found out that it was a first-round pick and a second-round pick that Dallas gave away to acquire him, I knew that EDC was never picking up that phone call. He would have laughed in the face of whoever was demanding a first-round pick and a second-round pick for anybody. It's just not really how this Ravens front office rolls. And to be honest with you, and I said this earlier on my show, I said that I would have been fine personally. I know, again, I just talked about how the philosophy of the GM is not of the same, ilk as mine, but I would have been fine giving up a first-round pick and a second-round pick and an equivalent D tackle to Mozzie Smith, only because I don't value draft picks over proven NFL talent. I just don't, because the the thing about draft picks is that you're hoping that they can hatch into a proven NFL commodity. But if you already have hatched commodities, right? Those would be more valuable, right? Those are the ones that you don't have to. There's a reason why, and I don't know if this is the greatest analogy, right? But there's a reason why, like, fast food and like going out to eat is like a $1 billion, like multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Because you can get it quick, fast, and in a hurry. You don't have to worry about waiting to prepare it and hoping that it's good, right? You're expecting some sort of quality based off of the equity that is built with you already. There's players like Quinnen Williams that have built equity in this league, right? That are worth a first round pick who has zero equity, right? Because it's a crapshoot. Nobody has ever came out of a first round of an NFL draft hitting on all 32 picks. It just doesn't happen, right? So again, I would have given up just to answer your question in short, Bradley. I would have given the first and second round in the equivalent D tackle for Quinnen Williams because it would have filled an immediate kind of need on this roster. The Ravens are a Travis Jones injury away from being devastated all over defensively, in my personal opinion. So I would have went for it because he could have also been a player of the future for this team as well.
I don't mind that as a young prospect kind of note. I'm for some reason it just feels really difficult to move a first and a second. And I get that Quinnen is that kind of a star level player. I'm sure he's going to be in a Cowboy uniform for, probably 8+ years now, but I don't totally feel comfortable with the fact of you're giving up the first and second capital in a year that you're 3-5, not guaranteed to make the playoffs, and still about to allocate a lot of money to Williams in the future where a couple of your guys need to be paid as well. So I think there's probably a lot of focus into it. If Zrebic and a couple of these quote tweets about, the rumors of the deal that the Ravens were sending with a second and a fourth, if that was real and that was the deal, we're all in. I don't have a single complaint, but we're talking some high level capital that the Cowboys seemed really, really desperate to acquire some kind of a talented guy in the middle as well. So I think that was a lot of capital to give up, even though it sure did sound like a real great match with Williams.
It's funny to hear the opinion on this because, Sutton mentioned this pre-show. It's tough to make a move when you are 3-5 and like how pivotal of a time this is. With Quinnen Williams, it's like you give up the first and the second and you lose 4 days from now, 5 days from now, and you're looking at what, 3-6, and your first pick is going to be 75th overall. Like, that's not a good spot to be.
It's rough.
But I also understand, and I mean, I already said I would have made the move if let's say Broderick Washington's healthy and I could give up a first and a second and Broderick Washington for Quinnen Williams, I would do it. And much of that is because of the Nnamdi Madubuike situation and the high probability, at least it seems like, that he will not be returning to this team. And the Ravens need an interior D lineman of the future regardless. But let's go ahead and get into their actual moves that the Ravens made.
Right. Yeah. This was the biggest one to note. Draymond Jones, edge from the Titans, acquired for a conditional 5th-round pick that could become a 4th-rounder if Jones gets 2 more sacks and the Ravens make the playoffs. Jones is coming off some of the best play of his career, 4.5 sacks over the last 4 games, but in total 9 games this season. 9 quarterback hits, 19 pressures, 7 more than any Ravens player and their leader, Travis Jones. He's had 35 career sacks since drafted in 2019. Pretty sweet stat. And he was with Denard Wilson and the Titans. So maybe a familiar system that he's dropped into in Baltimore. Sutton, what are you thinking for Jones? I mean, like, we can be pumped up about the edge because this was one of the positions that all Ravens fans were banging the drum for. So at least it's addressed in some way. I think that a guy that's not really as proven, I guess, as Jones, getting him for maybe a fourth rounder sounds a little scary, but especially for what DaCosta would move a fourth rounder or fifth rounder for in the past. So what are you thinking for acquiring Jones, and what does he bring for the Ravens?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the news that Dre Jones was being traded to the Ravens, I didn't know too much about the guy and what he was doing this season, so I had to go back and I had to watch a lot of the film, and it was conveniently enough he got 4 sacks over the last 4 games, and I went back and I watched and I broke down that film. And what I kind of took from it is you get a guy who not only has really good pass rush moves when you're talking about a cross chop, when you're talking about a bull rush, when you're talking about a spin move, right? He's also savvy. He can really, really execute stunts very, very well. I saw that a lot on tape as well. You're talking about a guy who can mix the pass rush technique also with size and power. And that's what's important. I mentioned this again, I think a couple of days ago. Mike Green, as much as I love him, right? I love Mike Green. However, he does not have the power, right? And the strength to really match up against these left tackles and right tackles consistently at the pro level. Not yet. He's got the pass rush techniques. He's got that down. He's a raw talent, but he needs that size and power. And I think that that's what Draymond Jones brings to this team so far. So I like it. I can't say I love it. I can't say I hate it. I thought it was only the appetizer, right, to the whole trade deadline kind of meal. I thought that we were going to get fed by this Ravens front office. We never ended up getting our entrees. We had to leave early, but I like it. I like Dre Jones. I do.
Yeah, this move just in a box. If you're just looking at this move, I absolutely love it. Dre Jones is a guy I also didn't know much about, but I had looked into him a little bit, the past couple of weeks, because I heard some things that he might be a trade target for the Ravens coming up at the deadline. And, watching him over these past couple of weeks, I saw a lot of things that I liked. Obviously was sort of more of a 3-tech interior D lineman with Denver. First 4 years of his career, then goes to Seattle for 2 years and kind of plays more on the edge. And he was with Mike Macdonald for his second season in Seattle. And then also, Zach mentioned, Denard Wilson, former Ravens defensive backs coach, is the Titans defensive coordinator right now. So there's a ton of familiarity there. You would think the Ravens probably talked to Mike Macdonald, talked to Denard Wilson, and got some information about him, and felt good about it. Conditional fifth that turns into a fourth if the Ravens make the playoffs, and Dre Jones basically plays well, gets 2 sacks. That's fine with me. I think I almost like this trade more than giving up a third for Jalen Phillips. I think Dre Jones is extremely underrated, and I think he really fits the Ravens culture. He kind of reminds me, and he's not as big as a Courtney Upshaw, but he kind of reminds me like he could have a similar impact to like a Paul Kruger or Courtney Upshaw with this Ravens defense, and he really fits the play like a Raven mindset. Very, very high effort guy, plays with a lot of tenacity, super strong. This is never going to be a guy that, isn't going to be trying on the field when you watch him. So I'm really excited about this move. If you just look at this move, I think it's a great decision. Obviously, Tavius going down with the broken foot. He's going to be out a while. Kyle Van Noy has not been great the past month. I'd say since coming back from his injury, hasn't been great. I like what I've seen from Mike Green, but it would be nice to have, maybe a little bit less snaps for him, maybe more of a pass rusher role, even though he did look great against the Dolphins on Thursday. So overall, I really, really like this move, and I think Dre Jones really, really fits what the Ravens want to do on defense.
Like, I guess I kind of saw this as a first attempt at trying to replace the player and production that you were expecting out of Kyle Van Noy. Brad, you kind of hinted at a little there. He's just had a very poor season. I know he had the injury, but he's been important to this locker room and this team. But when you get a guy that's, 4 or 5 years younger than him, producing elsewhere on a team that has just, been completely poor, and bring him in for, basically one of your, what is it, 5 fifth rounders that we have? It's some ridiculous amount of, late picks that we just don't need. You bring in a guy that can possibly change the look of the edge room in a way that is, let a powerful younger guy get half of the snaps that Van Noy is getting and see if he can produce it all. I think that he's not, brought here to be a run stopping edge by any means. It really is to be maybe an inside outside kind of threat at getting to the quarterback, because it's just not been enough so far. But right now, I think you're really missing the production that Kyle Van Noy has been providing the last couple of years with this Ravens kind of manufacturing sacks method. And since he is now kind of reverted back to his, old ways of maybe 3 years ago, Kyle Van Noy, after his injury, we literally have 1 or 2 guys that is, I can't even say consistently, but at least looking like they're putting in 100% effort at trying to get to the quarterback right now. So getting another guy in here that can hopefully change that narrative, I'm all for. And even if it's not coupled, I guess even as it wasn't coupled by another piece that we were hoping for, like Sutton mentioned with the entree, I think that we haven't seen a guy like Carl Lawson play yet, and maybe he can be another provider of that kind of role. But either way, the Ravens are trying to just bring a little more blood into the locker room that is trending in the right trajectory right now. And I'm okay with not messing it up a whole lot with a big star player and his, I feel bad saying ego, but, a big star player responsibility and attitude into a locker room that is just now getting their feet under them.
Yeah, I agree. I also do think Dre Jones is a really good run defender. So this is
okay, good.
Just a all impact. Like I really like this move, and I was very excited when they made it. I think I'm higher on him than most people are. I think this could be a guy that comes in and has a good end of this year, regardless what happens. I think you could extend him, and you could be looking at Draymond Jones and Mike Green as your starting edges next year. I really think that highly of him.
Wow. Oh, may have lost Brad there. Sutton, what are you thinking for? I know you're talking about an entree, whether it was the O-line or D-line. Are you surprised that, I know you were saying you wanted the entree, but it doesn't seem like most of the guys that were available were kind of this high price kind of thing. And I know you're talking about your draft picks, but how do you feel about even the Ravens not trading for an offensive lineman or anything like that? No speculation towards that at all.
Well, the whole offensive lineman thing, I think that was always going to be a dud. That was always a pipe dream for a lot of us Ravens fans, especially this season.
Yeah.
And Harbaugh has said publicly, he said that, the changes to the offensive line are on the table. But, we saw an entire bye week go by, and they trotted out the exact same offensive line in their last 2 games. So, and the offensive line is up and down. It's not always good. It's not always bad. It's like just good enough to keep that 5 on the field. You know what I mean? So I wasn't really surprised. Now if one of those guys was banged up like really badly, now Ronnie Stanley, of course, you're not going to get a left tackle at the trade deadline, right? It's just teams aren't giving away offensive linemen like that. That's an all-season fix. But outside of that, the rest of the line is healthy, so I wasn't surprised that they didn't address that. Outside of the offensive line, defensively, I was really just hoping that they would get somebody on the interior. Like I said, guys, if Travis Jones goes down in the next, how many games we have left? 8 games. You know what I mean? Like that is like now the cornerstone of our defense. Quiet is kept, right? Because everybody's raving about Kyle Hamilton playing closer to the box. Everybody's raving about how locked down Nate Wiggins has been for the most part. But no, the game of football is played from the inside out. We all know this. If your trenches can't hold up, then everything else is going to fall apart. It's like the foundation of a house. If the foundation of a house is not properly built, everything else, doesn't matter how pretty the windows, how pretty the staircases are, all the other trinkets and pieces that go in it, all of that will come crashing down if you don't have the trenches. So again, I was hoping that they would add somebody on the interior. That's why if I had to grade this whole trade deadline kind of time that we're in right now, I would give the Ravens a D-. I do I really like, I can't say I love, but I do really like the Dre Jones pick. It's just that we're super thin. We're super thin in an area where you do not need to be super thin, especially going into December and January.
Yeah, the Ravens obviously lost Nnamdi Madubuike for the season and basically haven't done anything to replace him. I know they signed Taven Bryan, who's been pretty bad against the run. So I agree. I think it's I can't remember who tweeted it. Someone had a great tweet about there's been like 2 or 3 offensive linemen traded at the deadline over the past 5 years, and the ones who have been traded are just not good players. Coming from 2 Federal, Jeffrey Simmons wasn't available. I don't think so. I think the Titans are sort of Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons are the only guys no one can trade for right now.
Yeah.
There were 2 players on the Titans I really, really liked going into this trade deadline. One was Draymond Jones, the edge rusher, and the other one was Tavondre Sweat, their nose tackle, defensive tackle, kind of plays both for them. He was a second-round pick in 2024. This is his second year, and he can get pressure. He can defend the run. I understand maybe would have been like a second-round pick. Like he's a pretty good player, but I think you trade for this guy, have 2 or 3 more years on a rookie deal, and that would have been a great move in my opinion. Maybe getting him and Jones in the same trade package. That would have been awesome. Who knows if he wasn't available? Who knows if they were even willing to trade him away for a second? But that was a guy I would have really liked. And even if not him, there had to have been a defensive tackle out there who could play meaningful snaps for this team that you could get for a 4th-round pick, for a 5th-round pick, one of their 5 5th-round picks. Like, I feel like that could have been an option, but who knows? I just feel like this defensive line is not good enough to get it done in the playoffs.
Yeah, because Bradley, look, you need a playmaker on the inside, especially again, like I said, in December and January. Right now, we're down to Travis Jones, next best, John Jenkins, next best, Brent Urban. I don't know about you guys, but I don't particularly see Brent Urban. I don't particularly envision John Jenkins making a big play, right, in December, right, in one of maybe that last week 17 or week 18 game, whatever it is, against the Steelers that might be for the division. Are they going to step up and make big plays, right, to really send the Ravens where they need to go? I don't believe so. That was the move to make today, right, to really bolster this team, because there's a reason. Look, guys, there's a reason why Vegas, however you feel about Vegas, is favoring the Ravens to win the division. Like, it says something. Like, contextually, this Ravens team has like a clear path right now. You've got a very easy schedule up ahead. The Steelers, albeit them beating the Colts, which was much to our chagrin this past Sunday, they still have a brutal schedule ahead. And by the way, they got to play us twice. We have a chance. There's an outside chance. And I get, I talked about it. Maybe they were more reluctant because the Ravens are 3-5, but still, I think it's time to push all of your chips to the middle of the table, because you cannot waste Lamar Jackson's career. And right now it seems like it's passing us by, man. So again, man, the interior D-line is going to be something that kind of rears its ugly head, I think, right when the Ravens don't need it to. So I'm disappointed. I'm fully disappointed in that. I'll switch to that. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I agree. It's, if Travis Jones goes down, it's like, oh my goodness. Was he out for the Lions game?
No. I believe so. Travis Jones was playing.
Okay, for some reason I thought there was a game where we were missing both Madubuike and Travis Jones this year.
That might have been last season, I think.
No, they were just doubling the crap out of Travis Jones in that game.
But like, it would be terrible. I mean, I already think it's not good with him. And yeah, I just don't think they're going to be able to get it done with the current D-line that they have. And like I mentioned, Zach and I have talked about this almost every episode the past couple weeks. You look at this roster and who's under contract next year, especially with Madubuike maybe having to medically retire. There's no one on this defense. And you got it. Like, I just felt like they would maybe trade for someone and either extend them or trade for someone who's under contract for a lot of years, 2, 3, 4 more years. And that is sort of an off-season acquisition. It doesn't even matter if you end up making the playoffs or winning the Super Bowl or whatever this year. I just felt like that was sort of a good time to maybe get one of these guys. But like Sutton, you said what, D- for the Ravens trade deadline? I understand that. I just think you're looking at like this Vikings game on Sunday, and you make a big trade maybe, and you lose to the Vikings, and then maybe you finish 7-10, 8-9, and you don't have those draft picks. I just think you'd be in a really tough spot. So I understand. Like, I think if I was in Eric DeCosta's shoes, it would have been tough to pull the trigger on a big move. And also, some people say comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah, yeah.
I almost feel like in this example, it's the opposite, where you look at all the other teams, and besides the Colts, I mean, who made a big move? Bills didn't do anything. Chiefs didn't do anything. One of my friends who's a Chiefs fan just sent me something that the Chiefs offered a 4th-round pick for Breece Hall, and the Jets wanted a 3rd, and the Chiefs were like, no, we're not giving you a 3rd. Wow. And I think Chiefs fans are really mad about that. And I texted him, I was like, if it makes you feel any better, like, we're about the same. Like, so I think a lot of these teams, maybe besides Howie Roseman, are very similar to how the Ravens operate. And the Ravens, Zrebeck was talking about this on The Collective. Ravens are probably more active than almost any team besides the Jets at this deadline. So part of it is tough. You'd like to see them address, a major concern on the interior D line. But when you look at the other teams, no one else really did much besides the Colts. And if I were the Colts, I don't think I would have made that deal either.
Yeah, I mean, sending 2 firsts for Sauce Gardner, who certainly hasn't been at the top of his game recently, is certainly a choice. That's for sure. My only issue is that, Eric DeCosta and this Ravens front office, they do tend to make moves, but they tend to go for the value moves, right? And you guys know the saying, you get what you pay for, right? At the end of the day, you have a Ravens team who is afforded the luxury because of who their quarterback is of, always having a chance no matter what. This Ravens team was 1-5, and all of us still got up here on all of our podcasts and still had hope that the Ravens could still make the playoffs, right? That is something right there. And I feel like when you're that close, kind of like what we talked about with Howie Roseman, as a matter of fact, can I read the quote for you guys again, just on air? Yeah. Let me pull the quote back up really quick, because it was just fascinating to me what Howie Roseman said about drafting and the philosophy behind that. Okay, so let me see. Where is it at? Oh, here we go. And I quote, Howie Roseman said this earlier today. When there's opportunities to be aggressive for the right players, we're not going to sit on our hands. You don't have great success without taking great risks. We cannot be afraid to fail. I think a lot of times for you to get to the top, you have to be willing to take chances that may look controversial at times. I will not live with regret. And I know you guys have kind of heard about the whole running joke of like the quote unquote almost Ravens list, right? The list goes on and on with players, high impact players, where if the Ravens just kind of swallowed their pride, swallowed their own philosophy just for 2 seconds and said, hey, look, what are some of the other best teams in the league doing, right? You talked about the Bills and Chiefs didn't necessarily do anything close to the deadline. Those teams have the benefit of the doubt, right? Making moves or not, knowing that they're probably going to be in the dance. They're probably going to be in the AFC Championship game. The Ravens have not been able to get over the hump of the Chiefs or the Bills. So the Ravens need to do extra work. They need to be more aggressive. They need to put themselves in a better position, the best position possible, in my personal opinion, in order to beat those teams when the going gets tough. I'll say it like this, and I'll pass it to you, Zach. If you cannot get pressure on Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes in January, you will not be playing in February. It's just as simple as that, right? So I think that you have to spare no expense when it comes to that, because it's a premium to be able to rush the quarterback. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Zach, I'll toss it to you.
Yeah, I'm with you. It hurts to know that we've kind of shot ourselves with maybe a few injuries and just a total lapse of a first kind of 9 weeks. And plus the fact, Charles has a great point. I don't know if this is even our year. And if you have that thought process at all, giving up, high capital for a player for, I guess, the future, it just hurts. It's hard to look yourself in the mirror and say, are we a top? Maybe we lose to the Vikings and Lamar gets injured, God forbid. But anything could happen the rest of this year where we turn into a top 10 picking team in the draft, and we need that pick pretty desperately. So I again feel I know there was an intimidating morning for the front office, as in, what do you do with these? I'm sure the Jets also came back to the Ravens, said, can you beat this offer? And we said, no. Like, the Cowboys wanted Quinnen Williams, and someone maybe even mentioned, Christian Wilkins in here. He got cut by the Raiders. I mean, what was it, 2 months ago? There's just no one besides those guys that are going to come through the door for a low price tag. It was a big bidders win trade deadline. 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner and a first and a second for Quinnen Williams. The Ravens are just not that team. And I see maybe in the Eagles' philosophy of it, Jalen Phillips, it's still a third. I don't think it's as much of a risk, but it's still, if it was between Phillips, if it was between maybe a first or second for Chubb, if it was, I guess, the 5th for Draymond, the Ravens' philosophy has always been to take that value guy. So while we can sit here as mad as we want, it really does factor in a very ugly way that we have made this situation for ourselves as a 3-5 team, playing a team that is very capable of beating us here this next week. It's again a high pressure situation that we've got ourselves into, that we're going to have to hope for again a lot of Lamar magic to bail us out of, and it feels like we're weighing on that a lot. Some people really calling for EDC and being upset with him not making the moves as well. It's the first time that this fan base has had like discourse surrounding DaCosta and his decision making, and I think it's just an uncomfortable time, because before this deadline, I was on a high. I mean, I was like, maybe the season's back, 2 wins in a row. It wasn't against great teams or anything, but 2 wins, the season's back on track. Like, it wasn't even near the freaking railroad. Now it's back on track. So it sucks that we are having almost a divided negative kind of week after such an uplifting last couple weeks and having a chance again. It's such a weird conversation, I think. And that's really been the whole season. I think I've said that a few times, maybe with DK, one of the last few weeks, saying it's just freaking weird right now as a fan base, seeing, a 3-5 team. I think it just completely threw the decision-making on its head, this trade deadline.
Well, I mean, I just think it's really quick, Brad. I think it's the deficiencies that we see in the postseason. That is why, a lot of Ravens fans are clamoring for, the Ravens to go out and get these pieces. So, when we do make it to January, because it's not a matter of, if the Ravens lose to the Vikings this week, or if Lamar gets hurt in a couple of weeks, or like I said earlier, even if Travis Jones, you have to operate under the assumption that you're going to be in the dance. Like, every single game. Brad, you said this a couple of weeks ago. I heard you guys talking on the show. You said, and this was like maybe when we were like 1-3 or something like that, or 1-4, you said at the end of the day, the rest of the games got to get played, right? That's just what has to happen. And like, for example, in 2019, the Ravens ripped off 12 straight games to end the season 14-2. And Lamar Jackson had the likes of Miles Boykin, Willie Snead, Seth Roberts, and the like at wide receiver, right? This team is so much more advanced in 2025 than it was in 2019, even with the 1-5 start. You've seen in recent weeks what this team is starting to put together. They're actually starting to find their identity. God forbid that they keep forcing turnovers. They're going to fully be back to the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson healthy. So I think you just have to operate from a place of, let's be aggressive. Let's go get it now. Like you mentioned, there's going to be so many pending free agents. A lot of guys who we're going to have to make decisions on, very, very tough decisions on, this upcoming offseason. on top of restructuring Lamar Jackson's or extending Lamar Jackson's contract because he's got a $75 million cap hit. There's a lot of work to be done, over this offseason. So there might be a little bit of I don't want to say rebuilding because you're never fully rebuilding with Lamar Jackson as quarterback, but there might be a retooling period after this season. So I think that for what it's worth, now, you won 2 games before the trade deadline. You've got a relatively easy schedule coming up. If you start putting together some more really good performances, all of a sudden you're looking like a prime playoff team to be playing again in January. And we've seen the deficiencies that happen in January. What happens? We cannot create turnovers, right? We cannot create pressure, right? And in certain times, our offensive line breaks down. We're not addressing that when we need to. That's my only issue, because operating how EDC is, it feels like we're kind of mailing it in. That's just me, though.
Super chat from Jeremy Early, first round exit incoming. Same old. Really appreciate it. Super chat, Jeremy. You can't really be more optimistic than that at this point, especially with the 3-5 start.
Yeah.
It is funny. I have so many thoughts right now. One thing is, Sutton, when Zach Dawson and I did the divisional round reaction right after the game ended, we basically were obviously not happy. And we were talking about how does the regular season even matter anymore? Like, are we even going to be able to be excited for regular season games anymore? And who knew what we were in for the next season? Like, we're sitting at 3-5. I can't remember what one of you mentioned this episode. It's a weird place to be and weird feeling to be right now, sitting at 3-5. I mean, they were 1-5 2 weeks ago. There's a couple of comments I really liked, Charles, and you mentioned this a little bit, Sutton. Our best chances were the last 2 years. Hopefully we can at least make the playoffs. Listen, guys, and not even the last 2 years. 2019, you're the number 1 seed, best team in the league, best offense in the league, probably the best offensive line Lamar will ever have in his career, has ever had in his career, and you play terrible against the Titans in the divisional round. 2023, best roster in the league. You dominated the team that barely lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs on Christmas Day, and you have a very weird game plan in the AFC Championship. 2024, I don't think the roster was as good, but I've said this so many times. 3 turnovers, the Bills have 0, and you still should have won. That just shows how much more talent your roster had than Buffalo's. So that's 3 years in the 6 fully healthy years of the Lamar Jackson era. Half of Lamar Jackson's years where he was fully healthy, you had arguably the best roster in the league and did not even make a Super Bowl. And that's why Ravens fans are so frustrated. And listen, this includes me. A lot of blame can go on EDC, but the roster's been there. And I agree this year, it probably wasn't. However, losing Nnamdi Madubuike is about as tough as it can get. So I understand both sides of it, but all of this conversation, like the elephant in the room is just they haven't gotten it done in these little tiny postseason moments. And that's why we feel like this versus maybe having 2 rings and 3 Super Bowl appearances right now. I mean, it's insane to think about where we could be if the game plans were a little bit better and a couple balls bounce our way and some playoff games.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We went down the rabbit hole there, kind of debating, maybe the future of this team and what it looks like down the road. Because just down this season's road, like it's just what Jeremy's talking about. It feels like, and what you iterated, Brad, like you can't imagine some Super Bowl run right now. It's just not in the books. So as much as we will be cheering them on for that, I really hope it does happen. I mean, we're going to have to hope it does. Prime Trust here with another super chat. Appreciate you, Prime Trust. Trade deadline aside, I believe this team will be back to how they should be playing. We will be in the dance in January. We'll be fine. I love that. Like there is still like that's how I want to feel about this. Thank you, Prime. Like we should be, happy that DaCosta went out and tried to do it. Let's take into account the Gilman trade. with this whole deadline thing. That's going so under the radar with this. The turnaround of this defense is directly coordinating with when we got Gilman. So let's count that in here. He addressed, a secondary issue and moving Hamilton around. Perfect. As Starks doesn't really get going immediately. Then he goes out and gets, an edge guy that we're begging for. When you're talking about the interior line, a few guys in your Mac Attack, how do you not improve the interior of trenches on any side? It costs just too much in a year that you don't know what's going to happen by the end of it. We want to be as positive as possible, like Prime is saying. I think the locker room right now is as positive as possible. Anyone that has been talking to the media is big smiles, big grins. It's been winning. No outside noise is affecting them. This trade deadline crap is not affecting them whatsoever. It's high mood football going into a week where it really needs to be. And I'm with Prime. I feel good. And I think that asking DaCosta to make these big moves, I think Quinnen Williams is the excuse for this because I think that was a possible move. But you can't ask for an interior trench move mid-season and expect it to be, this all-caliber fix that is going to excel your team into the top of the league to battle these Chiefs and Bills right now. You have to figure out how to get into that dance right now, period. Maybe that it was with making a move or two, which they did. It was Gilman. It was Jones. And it might not have been the big special plays, but I'm with the team that is saying we're getting better week by week. And I think that the mojo right now in the locker room is what we need to push our chips into, not getting more and more talent that we're hoping for, that we would be paying too much to get. That ship is sadly very, very far gone because there is no way to address Amadabike gone, and there is no way to address the poor play of Voorhees and Fa'alele. So I feel good, but I'm happy that at least Prime and me do.
Question from Kwame here. Do you guys think this is enough to beat the Chiefs and the Bills? The Cowboys are making moves with a worse record than us. I'll kick this one to you, Sutton. You got thoughts on this comment?
Yeah, shout out to Kwame. The Cowboys are moving as if they have the quarterback of the Ravens. That's what's funny about it. Like going all in, pushing their chips to the middle. They're 3-5-1 right now, I believe. Objectively, a worse football team pound for pound than the Baltimore Ravens are, and yet they're going out and they're getting Logan Wilson, right? And I know he was benched by the Bengals. I think a lot of that had to do with him not wanting to be with the Bengals, if I'm being quite honest with you. And then also them getting Quinnen Williams, shoring up that defensive line as well. They're making big moves to try to make a run this year. These are some of the moves that the Ravens should have made. They did not have the expendable first-round pick, right, that they got from trading away Micah Parsons or a guy like that over the offseason. I understand that, but it's just about the question, do I think it's enough to beat the Chiefs or the Bills? I said it 5 minutes ago, guys. Look, if you cannot get pressure on these guys in January, it's not going to matter, right? They're too good to just let them. You guys saw what happened week 1 against the Bills, right? At a point, Josh Allen was just dropping back, hitting his 3-step drop, coming out of the hitch and just letting the ball go, right? Had no worries in the world about any sort of interior pressure, nothing like that. Patrick Mahomes can do the exact same thing, right? And both of them can run on you. So if you don't have the interior D-line play to disrupt a lot of what those teams want to do, it's going to be curtains, bro. And it's going to come down to the Ravens relying on guys like CJ Okoye, relying on guys like Aeneas Peebles in spots, young guys. That's what it boils down to. That's how thin we are at this position. So, no, I don't think it was enough to beat the Chiefs or the Bills, especially not in the postseason, unless you play absolutely mistake-free football. And to your point, like you were talking about earlier, Bradley, yes, the roster has been there the past couple of years. You lose to the divisional in the divisional round to the Bills in 2024. You lose in the AFC Championship game to the Chiefs in 2023. What was the common denominator coming out of both of those games? How many turnovers did the Ravens force in both of those games? None. No turnovers. If you can just force one turnover, like you mentioned, we're turning the ball over 3 times and losing by what? 7 points? Losing by 2 points? You know what I mean? Like, if you can just create one turnover, get the ball back to Lamar Jackson one extra time, give him 1 or 2 extra possessions, that will make all the difference. And this Ravens team can finally get over the hump, right? But To force turnovers, the defense has to do that. And it starts on the inside, causing disruption in the pocket and around the line of scrimmage. So I don't think that this was enough to beat the Chiefs and the Bills. I just don't. But we can go on to the next question, though. My bad.
No, it's all good. Charles asking, how different do we feel right now if we win week 1, Brad? What are you thinking? Like, just proving that we can beat the Bills, I guess, is a funny question about it. But, like, I don't know. Sure, we'd prove that we can beat them. But, again, the moves that we've made at the deadline, I feel confident in. So what are you thinking if we didn't, I guess, turn around or something like that?
Sutton made a point about how much time Josh Allen had against us that game and how well he played, and that was with Nnamdi Madubuike. To answer Charles's question, I would feel a lot better. I mean, 3-5 versus 4-4 alone is a big difference. And yeah, just knowing that you can beat them in Buffalo. I mean, the last time the Ravens beat the Bills in Buffalo was 2019, December of 2019, when Marcus Peters has that great PBU to end the game on 4th down. Like, it's been 6 years. So, that game, let's get rid of elimination regular season games where you have to win to make the playoffs. That was the most into I've been with a Ravens regular season game in a while, just because I wanted them to win that so badly. And obviously at the time I thought it was going to be a 1-seed tiebreaker. Funny to look back on that, but I was, Zach included, very disappointed, very frustrated after that loss, for the reason of, can we beat the Bills and do we have the confidence to go beat them in the playoffs? And that, on top of being 4-4 right now, it would make a big difference for me.
So, do you have any thoughts about it? About maybe just like seeing us actually put one through the hoop one time, and instead of just being here completely lost with how we play against those two teams?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, if the Ravens won in week 1, I think it would have, been kind of like a snowball effect from there. Of course, they would have still rolled the Browns in week 2. But then in week 3, I think they would have beat the Lions. And then in week 4, I think they would have beat the Chiefs. I mean, the Ravens players said it themselves. I think one of the anonymous reports from one of the Ravens players, they had said that, that Bills loss in week 1 took a lot out of them. And I can imagine how so. You know what I mean? Like, it was a very, very emotional game. You're going up against a team who just kicked you out of the playoffs, right? Had a heartbreaking into the season last year after having another magical regular season run, right? You have an opportunity to get your get back. You're stomping them all game. And then fourth quarter rolls around and they just 40-25 with 5 minutes left. No problem. Walk you down and they beat you, right? And there seems like there was nothing you could do about it. The team looked absolutely helpless out there. You got Derrick Henry fumbling. You got the defense giving up whatever. Can't stop anything, right? And they come out of that game just kind of like deflated. Like, are we not who we thought we were? You go all off season improving your team. The GM's improving your team. You get draft, you get new players in. There's new juice in. Jair Alexander. The vibes are high. D-Hop is here now, and free to drop that game. It just kind of meant a lot. So, it would have been great to see one, to your point, Zach. I mean, to see one go through the hoop, because I think it would have really kind of set us up for having some more success later on in the season too.
You mentioned a guy that we want to talk about next. Another guy that was involved in the Ravens trade deadline, Jair Alexander, was traded to the Eagles, sent with a 7th rounder in 2027 in exchange for a 2026 6th rounder. Created $2 million in cap. Chuck Pagano, Ravens secondary guy, called him pros pro, a man's man. Talked about how great of an example he was and how much respect he had for him. As this whole season has kind of been a dud in the hype and excitement of getting Jair Alexander a part of the secondary. Brad, what did you think about? I mean, literally, we traded him for hardly anything, a late 6th round pick here. I mean, the Jair Alexander experiment just finally came to a close. And what are your overall thoughts on maybe his time with us?
Yeah, it's been a tough situation. When they signed Jair, Zach, we did a pod.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, the sentiment was like, do the Ravens have the best secondary in the NFL? Is this a top 5, top 10 secondary of all time? And like even, I talked with a couple of Packers fans that I know, and they were sort of disappointed that they cut him and disappointed that the Ravens were able to sign him for so cheap because they felt like he was still a really good player when healthy. And I think we sort of thought that it was going to be a situation where he is going to be really good and maybe we get 8, 9, 10 games out of him. And, if he can be healthy for the playoffs, it's a great signing. He played in 2 games. I think he played a little bit against the Browns. But like, it would not be right to say he single-handedly lost us the Bills game, but like he made a couple of terrible plays on defense in that game. The pass interference down near the goal line, and then gave up a couple massive chunk plays, I believe, on the Bills' last drive where they kicked a field goal or score a touchdown. It's tough. And then, I obviously was hoping that he was going to get back in there, week 5, something like that, but never really happened. And I don't know, man. It seemed like he handled the situation pretty well from what Joe Pagano said and from what the organization said. And, Howie Roseman mentioned that he talked to the Ravens about Jair. So it seems like it was sort of a situation where the Ravens didn't really have any hard feelings toward Jair. It just wasn't really working out. And he's probably not practicing better than guys like Awuzie and TJ Tampa are. So he's not going to play ahead of them. So I don't think, I'm not that distraught about this. I agreed with the decision that when they did it, and I'm not too mad about them trading him away either. Getting him to a good situation. I think they did right by him in this situation.
That's true. And I guess it's just sad because, like you said, Packers fans, the NFL was like, how did we just let what it even was, a $2 million Jair Alexander, maybe less than that, Jair Alexander go to the Baltimore Ravens? What in the world? And it doesn't even work out a little bit. Like it probably worked more in the negative for the Ravens and all. And he still leaves the place as a Chuck Pagano tweeting out pros pro, man's man, and he had a blast working with them. Like, it's just sad that we couldn't hold on to him and hope that we could do what the Eagles are, I guess, hoping to do, which is give him some playing time and hope that he does contribute. But it's just sad. I feel bad about it because it was a Lamar kind of thing too. It was Lamar getting excited and advocating and DaCosta saying, you know what, this is the Ravens type of move to make. Sutton, how did you feel about what's the taste in your mouth about Jair Alexander and his time with us?
It's gross, honestly, to be completely honest with you. I just think back to over the offseason when they originally brought him in, and you just heard the reports from the beat writers every single day how the vibes were high because of what Jair Alexander was bringing to the table. He brought new celebrations, he brought a new vibe, a new energy, right? I remember the news about the 6 a.m. morning breakfast club lift crew with Jair Alexander, Marlon Humphrey, and I believe Rashad Bateman, right, where they were all getting together, and it just seemed like there was a lot of camaraderie that was kind of being fostered with him joining the team. And with him leaving without us getting literally anything out of him. I don't know if you guys saw Marlon Humphrey's victory IG live on the team plane after the Dolphins game.
I did.
But he walks over to Jair Alexander, and he's sitting right next to D-Hop, and Jair's just kind of sitting there like, oh man, like he's just seeing a little bit out of it to me, and I don't know. Who is that in the chat? Let's Skull. We got a Vikings fan in the chat right now. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. What's up, Let's Go? Good luck to you guys on Sunday. But no, man, Jair Alexander, man, I was hoping he would have panned out for us, but unfortunately he didn't. So just gonna have to move on though.
Yeah, it was just a bummer, I think, of the whole situation. And in thinking, I mean, when that Jair Alexander trade happened, we had Ryan Ripken on here, and he called the Ravens roster the best he's ever seen, like in his whole time of being a Ravens fan. And to see how the whole team looks now compared to then, of the highs of saying that we look like the best roster in the league to, man, we didn't address this and this and this at the trade deadline, and Jair's getting shipped out, and it feels like we would be like the opposite almost. It feels like we would be this 3-5 team that's lost Lamar for the year or something. It's like the vibes are so different. And I think maybe these moves that the Ravens have made, I'm going to include Gilman again, and Gilman and Jones pay off as soon as the Vikings game and we get it started. But overall, just sad to see that. So let's get into a different topic. This has been my favorite thing to do on these Q&As, because we started it just earlier in the year, and seeing everyone's ratings, whether it's been in the chat or with our guest, it has been just absolutely electric. This segment is called the Panic Meter. We'll give some topics here, Sutton, and you're going to give us on a scale of 0 to 100, 100 being like the house is burning down, 100 or 0 being completely cool as the other side of the pillow. So first one, Ravens' chances to win the division. This is specific to saying after the trade deadline. Did the trade deadline swing you in any way? The panic of that. We can start with Brad, let you think on it, Sutton, for panic on the Ravens' chances to win the division still. I mean, shoot, Steelers just beat the Packers. I don't know how everyone feels about the Packers now, but still, how are you feeling about it?
Oh, yeah, it was the Colts. It was the Colts, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I don't feel too bad. You know, I think there was a realistic chance that the Ravens did absolutely nothing at the trade deadline. So when they go out and trade for Draymond Jones, you know, I was excited about that. Obviously, I was hoping they also trade a day 3 pick for a defensive tackle just to help the depth there a little bit. But listen, the Colts were not going to be dominant every single game this year. And the analyst in me is telling me not to say this, but the Steelers do have a little bit of voodoo magic, and they found a way to play against Giants Daniel Jones last Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't think the Steelers are very good. I have their schedule pulled up right now. They're 5-3. They play at the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. I don't think they're going to win that game. Then they have Bengals, Bears, Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, Lions, Browns, Ravens. So if the Ravens beat the Vikings and the Steelers lose to the Chargers, the Ravens would be 1 game back. And it's really just going to come down to the 2 games against the Steelers. Depending on what the Steelers do, depending on what the Ravens do, there's a solid chance the Ravens could go 1-1 against the Steelers and win this division. There's also a chance if the Ravens go 2-0 against the Steelers, this division is theirs. Obviously, the Ravens still had that terrible loss to the Steelers in the first game last year at Heinz Field, but completely dominated them in the 2 games in Baltimore after that. So we'll see. The Week 18 game is in Pittsburgh. The Week 14 game is in Baltimore. So the season could come down to that Week 18 game in Pittsburgh. For me to give a score here on the Panic Meter, I'll probably go like 55. I'll go a little bit above neutral because with the Steelers beating the Colts and just the fact that they're 5-3 instead of 4-4, I think that hurts a little bit. And I do think I would give the slight edge to the Steelers in terms of chances of winning this division. So that's why I'm going to sit at a 55 here. But if the Ravens go out and beat the Vikings this week and the Steelers lose to the Chargers, we're probably going to be feeling pretty different on Monday.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm thinking of the Packers. I mean, I guess I got NFC North on the mind, but still beating the 7-2 Colts, that's a big game to have possibly even a tiebreaker with if they get, farther into the playoffs and continue this kind of surgence they're having. I'm just impressed by it and I'm scared by it. I would kind of second what Kwame's saying. I'm kind of high right now. I'm nearing a 70. Sutton, what do you think?
You're nearing a 70, so you're more optimistic that the Ravens will win the division, right?
I'm a little panicked they're not going to win the division.
Oh, more. Okay, so I see which way we're doing it. Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
So for me, I'm gonna. I think I'm closer to where you're at, Zach. To be honest with you, I mean, the only reason I'll probably go like a 62, a 62. Again, I was up on my high horse like 30 minutes ago, talking about how. Oh no, wait, you said 55, didn't you, Bradley?
I said 55 and Zach said 70, so you're right in between us.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the only reason I say that is because on the one hand, I do think that with Lamar Jackson, the Ravens can absolutely go on a run. I referenced the 2019 run where they ripped off 12 straight regular season games with nowhere near as talented as an offense or as talented as an overall roster that they have right now, minus the offensive line. But with how the Pittsburgh Steelers are, like I listen, guys, this past Sunday, I woke up and I scrolled through the slate of games just to try to figure out what I was going to maybe solo out on, a single out on, because obviously the Ravens weren't playing and I didn't really want to watch Red Zone. I wanted to be an adult and watch a full game, right? Um, so I just had a feeling that the Steelers were going to win that game. I mean, the Colts were due for a bad one. The Steelers were coming off of 2 losses.
That's true.
And I actually disagree with you, Brad. I think that the Steelers will beat the Chargers this upcoming week. The Chargers devastated offensive line, right? No left tackle, no right tackle. Joe Alder's going to be out indefinitely, I want to say he is. And then we got TJ Watt coming to town, who's coming off of a big game, had a strip sack recovery. Man, I just think the pressure is going to be after Justin Herbert. So the Steelers, and it's going to come down to, can the Ravens sweep the Steelers in this division? So with that being said, I think it can happen. However, I still have to kind of curb my expectations because the Ravens could drop one. I mean, you still got the Steelers twice again. You've got the Browns again, which is always going to be dangerous because divisional game, right? We saw what happened last year with Jameis at the helm. The Bengals, I feel like they get the best of them, right? Especially if Flacco's still at the helm. I feel like they get the better of him. And then the Patriots. The Patriots are flying high right now. Drake May is trying to make an MVP case. I do think that the Ravens handle them. Not going to lie to you. I think that they can beat the Packers. It really just comes down to, can you beat the Steelers twice? I'm not sure about that, but I have more faith in Lamar Jackson than I wouldn't. So I'm going to go 62. I'm going to go 62 in terms of my panic meter on if the Ravens can win the division. I hope that's okay with you guys.
Yeah. And I'm honestly thinking of bumping my score up a little, maybe even like a 75. I don't like the idea of playing Flacco and how that offense is humming right now. I mean, that's just so many points. And getting into a shootout, it really could be who ends up with the ball last if the defense isn't playing anywhere near kind of what we're seeing these last couple of weeks. I don't like the idea of getting to a shootout with them. So I guess we'll have to see. But we are all a little panicked on that kind of scale there. Next one. This one's something I think Brad mentioned earlier about philosophy. The Ravens, and do they have a philosophy problem? Like the idea of, I guess, the last few years going after the secondary. You were burnt by Burrow and his receivers, so you decide to go all in on getting this incredibly elite secondary. You do address it, but now we're bit as we don't fully dive in the trenches like the rest of the NFL and their success has been trending. So, Brad, what are you thinking for the Ravens and their philosophy, and I guess how DaCosta has treated with organizing this team for this season too?
For years, the Ravens had a wide receiver problem, and I don't know a Ravens fan out there that didn't want them to finally just trade a first-round pick for a receiver. I remember when the Bills traded for Stephon Diggs, I was so mad because I just didn't understand why the Ravens didn't decide to make that move, pull that trigger. When the Cardinals traded, David Johnson and a second-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, I felt the same way. Eric DaCosta goes out and, he fixes the receiver position in the draft. Got to give him credit. But could have done it 3 or 4 years earlier when Micah Parsons got traded to the Packers in August or maybe even early September. I'm not sure when it was. I wouldn't say I was mad. I mean, it was kind of cool to see a trade that big happen. So I was kind of caught off guard by that. But then when you really think about it, would you trade 2 firsts for Micah Parsons? I would trade 2 firsts for Micah Parsons. I think that's a missing piece that the Ravens had. They just haven't been able to get after the quarterback. Sutton mentioned it, get turnovers in playoff games. Tweet from Spencer Schultz today. Dre Jones rental was a logical move and a good fit. Kind of meaningless if you can't get interior rush, though. And you can guarantee the defensive line will have more injuries, already paper thin. Ravens just want to get to the playoffs every year. That's all. Hope for some magic is what it is. Better than being born a fan of many other teams. I agree with Spencer there. We're not Jets fans. We're not Giants fans. We're not Browns fans. We're not Dolphins fans. I could go on and on and on. Zach and I have even, I gave a lot of credit to John Harbaugh a couple weeks ago when the Ravens were 1-5. Zach and I have gotten to watch a playoff team almost every single year since we became fans as kids. Like,
Yeah.
I was watching this Ravens team. The first year I really watched the Ravens, I'd say, it was 2008, 2009 when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And I've seen them miss the playoffs like 3 times. And I'm 23 now. So there's definitely a luxury there. But I do think, and I honestly think this might be more of an ownership thing than a Eric DeCosta thing, where there's kind of just a compete every year mindset. And I'm okay with that. But you have to go out and make the move at least once. You don't have to trade 4 of your picks away like the Rams did the year they won the Super Bowl. But trading 2 firsts for Micah Parsons, something like that, making the moves for Quinnen Williams today. I would do more of that. I would have, another receiver I just thought of, the A.J. Brown move. I would have made that move. Like, imagine this offense with Lamar. Like, how scary would this offense be going against A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry? Like, so I don't know. I think there's a bit of a philosophy issue in terms of not going for it all. It feels a little cliche to talk about it this year because they're sitting at 3-5, and I don't know that I would have made a big move either.
Right.
But I'm like pretty close to 100. Like,
wow.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm at like a 90, 95. That's where I'm at with it. And again, guys, the biggest reason why I say that is because it seems like the Ravens don't really realize what they have in front of them. You have an all-world quarterback, right? You have a quarterback who's going to go down as one of the greatest of all time. He's already locked up his case for a Hall of Fame gold jacket. I mean, you're talking about that caliber of player. You have to go out and you have to surround him, again, and spare no expense doing it. You have to get this guy premium players at premium positions, right? So what does that look like, guys? That looks like left tackle, right? That looks like wide receiver. That looks like edge rusher, because it's not just offense, right? You got to get him somebody who's going to give him the ball back, right? And the Ravens have never gone out and really said, hey, look, we're going to be intentional. Like you said, Brad, we're going to package 2 first-round picks for an impact player like a Micah Parsons, right? Or for an impact player like a Max Crosby or whatever that might have looked like. I think, again, the Ravens have stressed to us, and I've been a Ravens fan for a long time as well. But most recently, especially under the regime of Eric DeCosta, they have shown us time and time again how much they love their comp picks, how much they love their late round picks, their day 3 picks, right? And I talked about this earlier today on Coach's channel, Coach Ivan Evans, shout out to him, and actually on my channel as well. The Ravens have potentially 5 fifth-round picks that they will be taking into next year's draft, right? So one might think, okay, obviously, since the Ravens are stockpiling so many later round picks, they must have a pretty good track record of picking in these later rounds, correct? Wrong. Right? It's absolutely wrong. So let me just do this for you, what I did earlier today, and kind of list out the 5th round picks. And then you tell me if there's a philosophy problem, right, on this team, especially with Eric DeCosta. So 5th round pick since 2019, they go as follows. Dalen Mack, no longer with the team. Broderick Washington Jr., a low impact player who is still with the team. Shout out to Broderick Washington Jr. He's not coming back this season either. Sean Wade, not with the team. Dalen Hayes, another 5th round pick, not with the team. Ben Mason, another 5th round pick, not with the team. I don't even know if he's in the league anymore. Let's keep going. Cornerback Caillou Blue Kelly, not with the team, another 5th round pick. Rasheen Ali only contributes on special teams. Harbaugh cannot figure out for the life of him how to get anything more out of him. I don't even know if he has anything. more in him, Rasheen Ali. But shout out to him, though. He's on the team. Another 5th-round pick, though. And then the last one, the most recent one, being Carson Vincent. You don't even want me to get into the 6th-round picks, right? So the fact that the Ravens are valuing these late-round picks, and honestly, hell, even valuing some of these higher-round picks. I mean, because if I go through the amount of 1st-round and 2nd-round picks that we had, and how many of those players ended up being high-impact players, I mean, you're looking at guys like Odafe Owe. You're looking at guys like Marquise Brown, who are not on the team anymore. You're looking at guys who are, like, again, fringe impactful players, very low impact players. Rashad Bateman, as much as I love him, you can give away some of these picks, right? I told you guys the Howie quote earlier. We're not going to sit on our hands and rest on our laurels. We just want to compete every single year. No, package these picks together. F them picks, package them together, send them out, bring in a big star player that's actually going to impact your team right now today, because that's what your team needs. 95 on the panic meter for me when it comes to philosophy issues, for sure.
Ooh. Yeah, you guys are high scores. The chat is high scores as well. There's 2 things I thought about it. One being, the the F them picks kind of philosophy that the Rams had, where they kind of coined that term, and Aaron Donald's the MVP and saying that at the whatever, as he's getting the MVP. They sold out to get Von Miller, and it felt like that was their last hurrah. They lost like all those guys, or a handful of those Super Bowl roster players, and that was it. And the Ravens still have a few of these key guys for a couple more years, so it feels like losing some of those picks for the future, when you do have a Lamar Jackson for, knock on wood, 5+ more years, it doesn't seem the smartest. But Sutton, what you said today, I was tuning in as you were live earlier talking about reading off the 1st-round picks and their, like you just mentioned, their like opportunities, their length with the team and overall contributions to the team. You were naming guys like you just mentioned, like Hollywood and Linderbaum now being up in the air, and Hamiltons and Queens, whatever they are. There's still, if you put that list up there, half of them aren't even with the team anymore, or were traded, or it just, that is the closest I've been to saying, you know what? Why didn't we trade for a Quinnen Williams? Even if it was a 1st and a 2nd-round pick, why not? Because if it's at least a guy that you're keeping for 4 or 5 years to be the defensive cornerstone along with a few other guys, as you have a Lamar Jackson, it feels like the whole game plan, the philosophy, like this whole question is about, becomes easier to address year after year if you have a couple of those cornerstone guys. And it really was an incredible point, because I hadn't even thought about, when Brad had me talk about a couple of picks, trading 1st and 2nd-round picks, specifically 1st-round picks. Brad saying, would you trade Zay Flowers or Nate Wiggins right now? That is like what always sticks in my head. That always sticks in my head. And I'm like, absolutely not. Never, ever. And when you said that, son, that's the first time I've ever thought, if you're going to try and push all your chips into the table, you have to do it now when you have a chance at star caliber players like you do. Maybe we get lucky in this offseason. There's a couple more of those guys that become available, but year after year right now, those guys have been in very, very small bunches, and the Ravens have, again, quote, been in conversations, or at least called to see, but have never done the final push of the stamp and actually made the very expensive deal to get, the big, this is the best way to put it. You got to take a risk to get this fully loaded roster while you have Lamar Jackson. And I know that the contracts and all weigh in, but man, it's a really tough discussion to have, as well as my panic is a little less, because I feel like a whole off season now, with, if I could just, from after week 1, if I had just said sim to the next season, I would have, because it just doesn't feel right this year. But if we could do that and go to the off season right now, I'd feel better knowing that DaCosta has a full, almost an empty slate to work with this team, and have a chance at the next year to really build a real roster. So I think I'm going to be lesser. I'm going to be maybe a 63 or 64.
Really quick before we move off of this, one more point I want to make. I think that like the fact that this Ravens organization can sometimes contradict themselves as well kind of goes hand in hand with the philosophy problem that we're talking about. Think about the Steve Bisciotti and John Harbaugh interview before the season started, right? And how they were talking about how they value continuity so much, right, with this organization, and like they don't want to just fire their coaches, when things aren't going right, because bringing in another guy and having turnover like that may not lead to the grass being greener on the other side, which is totally true, right? But when you have a head coach who his teams are failing in the same way consistently, that should probably wake you up to maybe a change needs to be made, right? So there's that. And then also the little things, right? Like going out and acquiring a Cooper Rush for however many million, $4 to $6 million, knowing that he provides zero continuity for the offense that you have installed for Lamar Jackson, the offense that you have had installed for Lamar Jackson and the likes of Tyler Huntley and Josh Johnson and guys like that in the past, right? Not to really mention Josh Johnson, with those names, but Tyler Huntley mainly and Lamar Jackson, like you get continuity with those two quarterbacks. You get no continuity with Cooper Rush. So just the thought process of bringing in guys like that, and it's just a lot. And keeping all these draft picks, the philosophy problems, again, I'm at a 95.
Yeah, a couple other thoughts I had too. First thing, it just depends on if you hit on your picks or not. When the Packers traded for Micah Parsons and I played devil's advocate, what Zach was mentioning is I was like, would you trade Nate Wiggins and Zay Flowers, parentheses, the Ravens' last 2 first-round picks, for Micah Parsons? And he was like, hell no. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't either. Would you trade Rashad Bateman? Okay. Would you trade, and then you look at it, would you trade Rashad Bateman and Patrick Queen for Micah Parsons? Yeah. So
Yeah.
So it really just depends on if you hit on your picks or not. I know Sutton had a little bit of maybe disagreement there, but I would not trade Nate Wiggins and Zay Flowers away for Micah Parsons. So that's one thing. Another thing.
Might do it.
Another thing. And I really don't want to open up a whole new can of worms here because we've already been almost an hour and 20. But this also goes into coaching. It's not just trading for the player. There's been many years where the fan base has wanted a new coach. Sutton was just talking about how Steve Bisciotti values continuity, and he also has very good relationships with John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta. I would have kept Mike Macdonald after the AFC Championship loss. Sutton, yes or no? How did you feel then?
Oh, I always romanticize the moment of Mike Macdonald on the sideline against the San Francisco 49ers on Christmas night after his defense was forcing turnovers and making play after play. And he was just so hyped up and animated on the sideline. I was like, hey, look, that's our future coach. Like, that is the future of this franchise right here. He's young, he's fiery, he's smart, he has experience. It makes all the sense in the world. So yeah, I am a Mike Macdonald supporter through and through. I love what he's doing in Seattle. I really wish we would have kept him.
Yeah. And the second that notification hit my phone that he was leaving, going to be the Seattle head coach, I was very mad. I would have kept him. I understand how tough it is. Like if I was in Steve Bisciotti's shoes, I completely understand how tough that would have been. And who knows, maybe if I was in Steve Bisciotti's shoes, I wouldn't have done it. Like maybe I wouldn't have done it. However, it's not like everyone's acting like Mike Macdonald's gone. The Ravens are cooked for the rest of Lamar's career. There are really good coaches out there. I'm not sure if you guys watched the Seahawks. Mike Macdonald's team played the Commanders on Sunday Night Football, but I think Clint Kubiak is this year's Ben Johnson. I think he's that good. Sam Darnold looks even better than he did with the quarterback whisperer, Kevin O'Connell. I think Clint Kubiak is going to be a hell of a hire for someone. Unless the Ravens make the Super Bowl this year, that would be the move that I make. No questions asked. And the reason I'm a 95 here on the panic meter is because I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be shocked if that happened. So that's how I feel. If you guys want to respond, you can, but I know I've talked about this for a very long time.
No, I agree with you, man.
Okay. I'm closing that can of worms up quick. That's a get. That's what you're saying. That's an ugly can of worms. Okay, last segment of the panic meter. We will break it down in our preview later this week, but we want to get our thoughts, the panic thoughts about the Ravens playing the Vikings this week. Sutton, we might even ask you for a score prediction if you want, but overall, how are you feeling about our chances against a team that just beat pretty handedly a Lions team that whooped our butt not too long ago?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident, guys. I mean, one of the things that the Vikings are susceptible to is running the football, and that happens to be one of the things that the Ravens are the best at. So I think that if the Ravens can establish the run early in that game, they're not going to see too many problems. The Vikings are bad against QB scrambles, not to mention the fact that they don't see a whole lot of Lamar Jackson. They haven't seen Lamar Jackson since, what are we talking, like 2022, I want to say it was. I was actually at that game the last time they played Minnesota at the bank, the overtime game, right? Yeah, the overtime game. They don't see them. They don't see him all that often. So I just think that it's going to be a different pace. Having Lamar Jackson out there. I hope that he's not as a little slow and kind of like labored as he seemed to be in the first half of that Dolphins game. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but I certainly did. Outside of that, though, stopping the run is going to be huge in this one. I think you're going to see a lot of work from Dre Jones in the very first game. He's going to get a healthy amount of snaps. He's going to be asked to help stop in the run. Aaron Jones in that offense, they're going to be running off the right side. The right tackle, Brian O'Neill, is having himself a really, really good season. So it's going to come down to stopping the run for sure. A lot of blitzes up the middle, I would say. Sending Kyle Hamilton on some of those blitzes that you saw maybe like against the Chicago Bears. That's going to be important. If I had to give a score prediction, I would probably go. I think that the Ravens offense takes that next step in this one, and I think that they put up 40 plus.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go Ravens 41, Vikings 16. I think it's going to be another one of those games of defenses forcing turnovers, offense scoring points. I think it's going to be one of those. So when it comes to the panic meter for this one, mine is relatively low because I think that JJ McCarthy, again, with him being a young quarterback, you guys can look up this stat. This is a crazy stat I saw. He's holding the ball for over 3 seconds, right? When you're holding the ball that long, that gives your pass rush an opportunity to get home. You might even see Dre Jones get a sack in this one in his very, very first game. You might see Mike Green step up and get another sack. His third sack in 3 straight games, I think it would be for him. So relatively low on the panic meter for me. I'll go a 25.
Interesting. I do not feel as confident as you. I don't know who I'm going to pick to win yet. 48 hours from now, I'm going to go with I'll sit right around 50 because I do feel very, very up in the air about this game. I won't go too in depth here, but I don't think JJ McCarthy was awesome on Sunday, but he looked a lot more poised than he did in the 2 games where he played before. And I think their defense played really well. So I'm obviously scared of Brian Flores after what happened in 2021 on Thursday Night Football. We'll see if the Ravens can beat the sticks coverage, blitz packages if he goes to that. So I'm obviously scared a little bit about that. And I'll sit around 50 here.
But Lamar's been crazy good against the blitz, though.
He has.
Crazy
he has
good.
been good.
That's true. Yeah, I'm scared of Flores. I'm scared of the guy that's in the picture right under me. That's Justin Jefferson. My panic isn't too high, though. I'd say I'm about like a 40. I think the team is confident right now. The defense is playing as good as ever. And my only issue has been the last couple of weeks still giving up really whatever the one for the other team wants. Like, it's been Jalen Waddle, it's been Rome Odunze. They've had stellar games, and that's been the only recipe that the opposing team has gotten going at all, with the Ravens just kind of not necessarily allowing them to do it, but that's what they're giving up. And to say that you're going to, quote, give up, these big plays to a Justin Jefferson makes me a little more nervous. So I still feel I don't feel as confident as Sutton does with that score. I do feel confident. I don't want to give a score prediction yet, But that's my only concern. I think that we can get to JJ. And even like you said, with the young quarterback kind of situation, I also consider Harbaugh's record and everything against young quarterbacks, period. I know JJ is kind of a little more seasoned, but still, the Vikings haven't seen the Ravens on either side.
You know, a lot's been made about, you mentioned Justin Jefferson, a lot's been made about Nate Wiggins, you know, traveling with star wide receivers in these games, you know. And you mentioned it, Rome Odunze and Jalen Waddle both got theirs in those last 2 games. I mean, A, is Nate Wiggins overrated? And B, do you think that Justin Jefferson really does him bad in this game? Because if so, then I could totally justify trading away a first-round pick, which would have been Nate Wiggins and a Zay Flowers potentially for Michael Parsons. But what do you guys think about that?
I'm one of the biggest Nate Wiggins fans in the Ravens fan base. You asked the question, is Nate Wiggins overrated? I think Nate Wiggins is underrated. I think he is.
Wow.
I think he's one of the best corners in the league. He did get beat by Odunze a little bit early in that one, but I mean, the pass rush was terrible. He was covering him for 10 seconds and played really, really well in the second half. Got the pick against the Bears. I felt like he played well last week too. And then, the 1-5 start, it felt like he was really the only bright spot on the team along with Zay Flowers. Funny to mention. Those were really the 2 guys that I felt like you couldn't say anything negative about the first 5 or 6 games of this season. So I like Nate Wiggins a lot, and I don't like Ronnie Stanley played terrible against Myles Garrett week 2. If Nate Wiggins gives up 120 and a touchdown to Jefferson, I wouldn't think too much differently of him, to be honest.
Wow. I could definitely see that happen. And you can even go back to, I know you're talking about the 1-5 start as well, but you can go back to Devontae Adams dropping a few gimmies, even in the end zone.
Yeah.
That it felt like it was a break for the Ravens, making that game even close. So, again, I don't want to harp on Wiggins. I just feel like we might be rating him pretty properly of the, can he take the next step into superstardom at the corner position, or if he is, an underrated guy in the media, because, like you said, the only bright spot for the team, through those first couple weeks. So overall, everyone a little panicked here for the Vikings game, but I think there's confidence in the fan base, confidence in the front office, the organization. I'm feeling good about it. And we want to thank Sutton so much for coming on tonight. It was an awesome Q&A. You can find him at the Purple Rain podcast and at Sutton Def on Twitter. I want to give some shout outs to people in the chat. We had 30 people in here. Shout out to all of you for coming through. Prime Trust, David, Kwame, Dwiz, to Federal, Mackay, GMJ, Charles, Jeremy, and Prime with super chats. Appreciate you guys. Mac, Let's Skull. Shout out Let's Skull. Killer Cam was in here. ISO was in here. Didn't notice you guys. Sorry. Khalil was in here a little bit. Appreciate you all for coming through. If you haven't subscribed, you definitely should. Like the video if you haven't already. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Peace.
Go subscribe to the Purple Rain podcast. Follow Sutton on Twitter. Stuff's in the description. See you guys next time. Peace.